It's amazing, isn't it, how a lot of people on the left and the media generally were quite happy to go along with the lie that Keir Starmer kept pumping out to the British people, that the EDL were responsible for the riots that followed the Southport massacre. And now they're turning on him because he's lying again, this time about the sort of gifts he received from Lord Ali. I'm Granniopteryx. I'm on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. You see, when somebody has the habit of lying, it doesn't tend to be only in one direction. And that's the big mistake that the left usually, they make all the time. They have a hero and they think, OK, well, they're lying about this, but they're lying in the service of good, so we're not going to deal with that. And then they get very upset when they discover that this is a pattern of behaviour that goes through everything that this person does. So here that this is in The Guardian, which I've taken deliberately because this isn't some right-wing paper that's trying to get at Keir Starmer. Starmer's £100,000 in tickets and gifts, more than any other recent party leader. Well, one of them was he was at the Premier League match between Wolverhampton Wanderers and Arsenal last season, Molineux, and he was in some sort of a private box. Now, let's contrast that with this picture of Rishi Sunak, who is in the stands with everybody else at a stadium when he was watching Southampton. So, yeah, probably the people around him are all vetted in some way, but that's as far as it went. Starmer, on the other hand, had to be treated like royalty. He got 40 sets of free tickets during his time as a Labour leader, mostly to football matches, but also £4,000 worth of hospitality at a Taylor Swift concert and £698 of Coldplay tickets in Manchester. He was criticised this week for the scale of gifts given to him by Lord Ali. I mean, I cannot understand. And yeah, I can understand him accepting corporate hospitality. I can understand that. I don't approve of it, but I can understand that. What I can't understand is how he can accept that another man buys clothes for his wife. I cannot understand that at all. How demeaning is that to any man? To have some other man, a stranger, buy clothes for his wife. I'm not talking, I've said this before, I'm not talking about a few gifts here and there. You know, maybe a nice sweater for Christmas or something, but an entire wardrobe of fancy clothes. And he can accept it. And he doesn't seem to feel humiliated by it. Do you know what? I have a sneaking suspicion that Lord Ali does feel he's humiliating Starmer with that. I really do. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he must despise him. Anyway, apparently there's now, I don't have that on this. I've got a few different examples. I don't have it, but there's another Labour MP, I don't remember, Phillipson, that's the one. And she accepted Taylor Swift concert tickets, again from Lord Ali, saying that, well, my daughter wanted to see the Taylor Swift concert, I couldn't turn it down. Yeah, well, my sons wanted, one of my sons wanted to go to the Aerosmith concert when they were over here, and I had to turn it down because we couldn't afford it. And then we've got the flat. Starmer defends borrowing an £18 million flat as a place for son to study during election. Now, he says that there are two things in this story. The first is he said it was a quiet place for his son to study because GCSEs happened to be during the election period and there were reporters outside his house and it was all disrupted. So somebody had a look at the dates. Starmer said he stayed at the penthouse donated by Lord Ali from the 29th of May to the 13th of July. The English National GCSE calendar ran from May the 9th to June the 19th. So they were there 10 days after the GCSEs had started, well past the time when the son was supposed to have been studying, and they stayed almost a month afterwards. So he was lying about that. But even more, the lie he was saying was that I was doing what was best for my son. I was trying not to disrupt his education. This is from a man who, having placed a tax on private schools, is going to be disrupting the education of thousands of children who go to private schools. And I'm not talking about posh snobs either. Some of these private schools are for children with special needs of some sort. But even if they aren't, not only will the education of these children who have to be taken out of these schools by overstretched parents, they will have their education disrupted. But when they get put into local schools who are already overstretched, the education of the other children in the state schools is going to be disrupted as well. And this is a man who says, well, I didn't want to disrupt my child's education, even if that was just an excuse. It's a man who feels that the laws, the rules, the sympathies do not apply to him. Now, what else? What else is there? Yeah, apparently Sir Keir Starmer's stay-at-home COVID video was shot in that same flat in Covent Garden. Which means that he left home to go and sit in somebody else's flat. I don't know why. To tell people to stay home. And this is also reported in the Daily Mail. Now, it's not just Keir Starmer. Here we have this. Labour MP took a £1.2 million loan from Lord Ali to buy a house for her sister. Now, what was going on was this. Her sister, this woman here, I think, is the Baroness McDonough, and her sister, Siobhan McDonough, is an MP. Sadly, Baroness McDonough had a terminal cancer and she needed special care. So, Siobhan McDonough accepted a loan from Lord Ali to buy a house for her sister, a house that had a downstairs bedroom and bathroom complex, so life was made much easier for her. I can understand her trying to make things easy for her sister, and she does say she's going to pay it back when probate has been sorted out. But it doesn't really matter whether she pays it back or not. There was 1.2 million quick pounds which were given to her simply because she's a Labour MP. And she may pay it back out of, obviously, she says she's going to pay it back out of what her sister leaves, the house, for instance. But it's free money she got to tide her over. I don't blame anybody for trying to make their family more comfortable. What I am saying is that they are preventing other people from making their families more comfortable with their laws. They're not paying old people their winter heating allowance. They're going to put taxes on boilers that don't meet their requirements. They're going to make restrictive laws about pubs and smoking in the gardens and all that sort of thing. They are making other people more uncomfortable. And then they say, well, you can't blame me. I was just doing this for my family. I'm all right because I'm on the right side of history. So whatever I do, that's okay. That's what I'm talking about. These are people who regard themselves as above the law. They just want the best for their families. That's fine. Why don't they let other people have the same privileges? That's the Labour Party for you. That's socialism for you generally. As a matter of fact, I read a book about Oleg Gordievsky. He was a spy. He worked for the KGB. And he turned into a double agent. He was giving stuff to the British. He got quite disillusioned with the way Russian society was working. But at one point he mentioned something. There was a time early on when he was a youngish agent and he was in London. And the Russians were really worried that a war was about to start. They'd really got very paranoid about it. And Gordievsky was instructed to check on the movements of the families of British Army personnel. That is, he was supposed to check that the families weren't being moved out of cities or sensitive areas. And that was a really good indicator of how the Russian government saw themselves, because all they were doing was projecting how they would behave onto how the British would behave. In the Russian elite, in situations where they were going to declare war, would have moved all their families out to Siberia or somewhere relatively safe. And they just assumed that the British would do the same thing. And unfortunately, the government we have now would. They are demonstrating that they would do exactly that. That appears to be some sort of a socialist thing, doesn't it? Okay, well, till next time. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.